All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of And Another Thing. Today, we are talking about anxiety, the big A word. What was the movie where they had the big A? It was like for adultery. What was that called? Remember that movie?
Scarlet Letter.
Scarlet Letter. The
Not
Scarlet
just
Letter.
a movie, it was a book.
Yes. Well, I saw the book.
You saw the book, huh?
No, I saw the movie.
Sorry.
Yeah, and we're not cutting that. I can be an idiot. Anyway, joined today by someone who's going to absolutely make sure that everything that I say wrong is pointed out for all of you, and that's my sweet wife, Dana Fike.
Hello there.
And, of course, the lovely and anointed Rebecca Guzman here today. And so, guys, we're talking about anxiety. I've just preached a sermon down there, and I'm wiped out. I'm frustrated about the Stevie Wonder clip. It didn't work the way I wanted it to work. I'm going to have some editing to do on the sermon. It gives me some anxiety to think about that. But anyway, we're going to be talking today about anxiety. And so, Rebecca, you're a licensed professional counselor. You've been on the show before, so you don't need to give us your accolades.
Okay.
But tell us about, when you heard the sermon. And I'm sure you've probably heard lots of sermons about anxiety. Yeah.
I don't think actually that we talk enough about anxiety, honestly.
Yeah. But so what did I get wrong and what did I leave out? And what would you add to specifically the piece about clinical anxiety? What would you add to what I had to say?
I'm going to actually start on the flip side, if that's okay.
Perfect.
And say thank you so much for preaching about clinical anxiety, for taking the space on a Sunday morning in front of the congregation to say this happens, it exists, people struggle with it, it doesn't make them sinners any more so than the rest of us.
Right.
And that there are solutions for it. And I think that's a really important place to start the conversation.
Why do you think there's such a stigma on it?
I think because in general, mental health is a difficult topic in the church because we like to believe we can pray and it's done, the end.
Right,
we like
sure.
to believe that because, I mean, you've said every sermon this month, God is the healer and he can and is able to heal all things.
Yeah.
And he has also given us so many other ways to meet our needs. And part of that is through the mental health field, just like with doctors, he's given us teachers to help our brains grow and develop in the ways he wants them to. He's given us medical doctors to help our bodies develop in the ways that he intends them to. He's given us the mental health field for our brains and our mental and emotional well-being to develop the way he intends it to.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important place to start this conversation. Our amygdala is part of God's plan for our best and healthiest life.
Yeah, that's an important word, the amygdala. I've learned a lot about the amygdala. I haven't learned everything about the amygdala, but if you saw the sermon, or let's just say you haven't seen the sermon, the amygdala. I also thought this was a funny line. I had some lines that I wrote into the sermon that I just thought, these are winners. So when I said that the amygdala is the size of an almond and it can make you nutty. Come on. That's pretty good, right?
But I haven't seen the sermon.
So don't ruin it.
Well, I just don't know.
Dana doesn't pay attention to the sermons at the Movement Church.
No. I was teaching the kids this morning.
That's right. She had other responsibilities. Yes. She does podcast and she watches the YouTube. Anyway, the amygdala, Dana, since you didn't hear this, the amygdala is part of your brain, and its job is to function to teach us or to tell us that there's danger afoot. It's what tells the zebra. This is all Rebecca. She taught me this. What tells the zebra that the lion is not a friend. And that it's time to get the heck out of there. So it starts telling the heart to pump faster, to put blood into the limbs so that zebra can run. And the same thing is true for us. We have an amygdala that tells us that's a problem, that's dangerous. And if we didn't listen to the amygdala, or if it wasn't there, then our life would probably be very short because we wouldn't see the danger that's before us. But the idea of the sermon, not to ruin it, but the idea of the sermon is that we neither as Christians have to fight or to flight. We have a third option, and you need to watch the sermon to find out what it was. But anyway, so continue what we were saying, Rebecca, about clinical anxiety and that whole piece.
Yeah, I think, and just to expand a little even on that idea of fight or flight, there's even beyond that, there's other ways that God has designed our brains and our bodies to respond to threat. Can I share a little visual, if you will, of the amygdala?
I cannot wait to see this.
So, if you will,
yes.
put your thumb inside your hand like this.
Okay.
And then fold your hand over it.
Fold it.
So, if we imagine this is like our brain, this part of your hand is like what's right behind your forehead.
Yeah, sure.
And then underneath here, the thumb is our amygdala.
Okay.
And this is like our brainstem going down our spine.
Very cool.
So this is the part of our brain that handles all of our best self. It's our prefrontal cortex. It's the part that makes our long-term decisions cause and effect. It's where our empathy lives. It's the part of us that thinks through why we do the things we do. It's connected to our values. It's what helps us think my faith, what matters to me.
Sense of belonging.
All of those best parts of ourselves. Our amygdala is kind of that basic part of our brain. It's what develops first. It's the animal part of our brain.
Wow.
And it's survival. It's what's operating in a baby when it's crying, when it says, wham, I need my diaper changed. I need food. There's a threat to my survival.
I did that too, by the way. Not so much the diaper, but I need a nap. I love what Papa said last week. Sometimes we're like babies. We just need a nap and a meal.
Exactly. And those are signals coming from that part of our brain. And that's what's happening in the zebra. Like that's where that signal's coming from. And that's God's design for survival, is that part of our brain, when there is a threat, that part of our brain says, whoop, I'm throwing off this upper part of the brain's sort of control center, and I'm taking over. I'm starting to send the signals to the rest of our body to make sure that we can survive this. We're fight or flight. Or there's also some other reactions that sort of freeze, faint. There's some research showing that perhaps some people go into sort of a fawn response. There's lots of research out there on those things if people are interested. But really, those are all reactions we often see even in the animal kingdom and ourselves as humans. It's ways that we try to manage safety.
Yeah.
And it's coming from here saying, we're going to flip our lid. We're going to kick off this upper best part of ourselves.
I've never known what flip our lid meant.
Yeah.
You taught me something.
And I mean, it's part of God's design to keep us safe in those moments. The problem, like you're saying, is if that's happening in moments when we need our best self on board to help us make wise decisions in line with our values, in line with our faith, in line with what God is calling us to do. That's when things in our day-to-day life are not following that path that we want, that God wants. So I think that's where then we say, if that's happening on a regular basis, then that plan for how our amygdala should be functioning is derailing us instead of guiding us to survival and the way that our life could look or should look.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I've never really heard anyone say it. I just decided to start saying it this way. But do you agree that it's organ failure? That it's the brain is an organ and it's not functioning properly. So isn't that organ failure?
I mean, I think it's a very catchy way to say that. I do. I think failure sometimes implies that there's no coming back. And I would say that piece maybe isn't true, because our brains have neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Which I think, again, is part of the power and beauty of God's design. We're not like, like lizards or geckos where like they lose a tail and it'll grow back. God didn't give us that kind of crazy amazingness, but he did make our brains in a way that they can regrow and heal and continue to develop. Yeah. Our whole life through our entire lifespan. So even if we suffer something, we develop in a way that's not optimal for whatever reason, something that happens to us, something that we've learned throughout our life, we always have the ability to grow and retrain and heal. And I think that's really reflective of God's identity, who he is and his intention for us.
That's awesome. Well, Dana, I asked you to be here today because I love you.
Thank you.
You're beautiful.
Yes.
And we are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year.
We are.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We did it.
No, well, you did it. I'm very proud of you.
Yeah.
It's been hard, I'm sure, for you. It's been easy for me.
Had some anxieties.
I imagine. So, but I asked you to be on the show today because I happen to know that you have wrestled with this issue for a long time. And I mentioned in the sermon that about the 7-year mark of our marriage is when we made sense of your clinical anxiety. And so why don't you share a little bit about what that's been like for you and what you've learned about yourself and, anything else you want to share about the experience that you've walked through?
Yeah. First off, we're talking about anxiety, and I have anxiety right now.
It's happening in real time.
I'm like right here, but so I guess I deal with performance anxiety as well as just kind of day-to-day life. So what is there a different term for any of those, or is it just the same?
Yeah, I think you can probably categorize different situations that provoke different types or degrees of anxiety. But in general, it's that same process happening where our brain is going, something feels like a threat right now.
That camera right there feels like a threat.
Yes. I'm not really, I'm very camera shy.
Yeah.
So,
but you look really good on camera.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. He's doing brownie points right now. So, but we been married for 25 years. I don't think I realized I had anxiety. I don't even realize the term of it until I went through some counseling. I think Fike and we were fine. Were we fine?
I don't think so.
I don't think we were.
I think we're, honestly, I think had we not figured out what to call what we were both experiencing in you, had we not figured out what to call it, I don't know. I don't know.
We couldn't resolve our conflict.
Yeah.
It was the same conflict. I'm sure everyone can kind of relate to that.
Well, and everything was wrong. Everything's wrong all the time. And I was like, I think some of this is actually right. And you're like, no, it's wrong all the time. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. And so that's like, where, hey. I mean, honestly, for me, the best thing about counseling, and I don't know if this is your experience in providing counseling, is really, it's not so much that you get fixed or the problem gets solved. It's that you have a name for it.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, this thing that we haven't been able to make sense of, it's called anxiety, and it's dividing us. Yeah. And so instead of fighting against each other, let's fight together against that.
Right. And that's what I was going to, just say is that, it was our 7-year mark.
Yeah.
Decided to go to counseling to get some work on, and then, self-discovering is a big deal, I think, in counseling. And I mean, I will tell you her name, Sherry Walker, was incredible.
Yeah. Shout out to Sherry Walker. We love you, Sherry.
Walking through our marriage and, anxiety and just a lot of different things. And so what she did say to me that was just life-changing and was that people with anxiety, they live right here. And, where you need to be is right here, And then when something bad happens or just something minor might happen and kind of mess your day up, the person that lives in anxiety right here goes here.
Yeah.
And blows up or, feels out of control, that kind of thing.
And the person that lives right here leaves the house.
Yeah. And
there's no margin left if you're up here all the time.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah. So like
similar to breakout. I mean, to burnout last week. It's the same idea. You just can't live like that.
Right. And I was living that way, and didn't realize it. I've been on some medication for, I don't know, 10 years maybe.
Well, I mean, that was the 7-year mark. 25 minus 7. So that's
math.
What's that? That's 18.
Yeah, I've been on medication for a little bit. And I'll tell you, like, even in that was even like so helpul. Just how the hormones kind of are like evened out. I know when I was pregnant with Judah, I had to get off the medication for a month or two, and he like went to the doctor with me and was like, so when are we getting back on this?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's just, it was definitely...
Because it was the first trimester.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
you're in physical pain and then you got mental trauma.
Yeah, he doesn't know.
And I'm just getting all the lava.
Yeah. And so that actually was just a huge resource, was medication and the right medication for me. Another resource that Sherry walked me through was just application. And let me tell you, I am not perfect. Even this week, I had some anxiety. And when Fike says that we're doing this together, it's the whole family. With my incident this week, it was with Justice. And, you just have to be sensitive to your emotions and how you're reacting and the questions you need to ask yourself in that moment. Why am I reacting this way? And Justice, just quietly told me, Mom, are you okay? And that just triggered, you know what? Nope, I'm not okay. Why am I reacting? Why am I right here? A couple of things.
It could be because he wrecked his second car.
Right.
And now we're having to figure out how to pay for it and all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It could be actual trouble.
And those are things that happen when you're right here, and then something like your son getting into a wreck or whatever it is, you're right here. And so, we couldn't really communicate effectively because it
was effective.
We couldn't communicate appropriately.
Okay. No, there we go. Yeah. Christian.
Yeah. Because of that ramped anxiety.
That's really cool that Justice was tender enough to not react to what you were giving him, but that he was like, "Are you okay?"
Right.
That's really precious.
And we actually, I was, in my brain, I was like, I'm not okay. I don't trust you, God, and I need to trust you.
Wow.
This is going to, God, you're going to take care of this. I can't. And I'm out of control right now. And then immediately apologize to Jay for my actions or the way I communicated.
Yeah.
But it's just you think it's just it's baby steps and ongoing journey with anxiety. And just how do you apply it? How do you grow? Kind of living in it.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, and Dana, I mean, you didn't hear my sermon, but you just preached it. I mean, seriously, the idea of, I called it over-the-counter anxiety as opposed to clinical anxiety, that really you need a licensed professional counselor to help you make sense of it, and maybe medication to bring you to an even playing field. But then once you get to an even playing field, now all of us are dealing with the opportunity to engage with fight or flight. And so in that moment, you decided, I'm going to fight. Right. As opposed to running from it. You were like, I'll be a fighter. And that's my instinct too, by the way. I was telling Rebecca, whenever I'm faced with the opportunity to engage with anxiety, I don't usually tend to run from things. I tend to say, hey, God, I got this. And then I knuckle up.
Yeah.
And that's not the way. That's not what Christianity is supposed to be. And so anyway, good job. You preached my sermon. Probably better than I did.
Perfect. And probably a lot faster.
A little bit. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair criticism. Yeah. So, Rebecca, talk to me about, I'm curious about this. You see patients who are, putting their hand up and saying, I need help with anxiety. Yeah. How do you discern the difference between what I called over-the-counter anxiety and actual clinical anxiety? How do you discern the difference?
That's a great question. I think, like you said, there is a degree of that over-the-counter that exists in almost everybody I work with, because it's part of how we're wired. We are made in God's image. God is someone who is in control. We are made to want that. Yeah. It's part of how we're designed. When it becomes sort of that degree of, I don't know how to turn off both that mental, those thoughts of worry, looking for the answer, concern about those things that are maybe lions, maybe they're not.
Yeah.
And the physical reactions in my body, those signals that the amygdala is sending for my heart to be beating fast, my lungs to be breathing quickly, my muscles to be tense, my stomach to be agitated, all of those physical symptoms. When both sides are not able to turn off, that's typically for me the sign, okay, we're looking at something more than just the kind of on and off over the counter struggle. So
it's the can't versus the won't, right?
I think that's a fair distinction.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard to figure out for someone on their own.
Sure.
Because sometimes we say, I should be able to. We should ourselves a lot in the church. I know. Sorry, maybe that's not appropriate to say, but
no, listen, that's the kind of show this is. Don't should yourself.
I say that to clients a lot, especially in the church. Why can't I just stop? Why can't I just trust God a little more? Why am I here again?
Yeah.
And I almost get teary saying that because I do it myself. And I think I've seen people in the church come week after week on their knees saying, why am I here again?
Yeah.
And when we're at that point, oftentimes it's because we're at the point that we need something outside of ourselves for that next step.
Right. And so what do you tell a person who you would say, okay, I don't think this is clinical. I think this is spiritual. I think this is, something else. Baseline, level playing field.
Yeah.
What's your advice? What's your counsel? I mean, Dana was talking about how Sherry kind of equipped her with certain language. I mean, even this thing for her was massive in understanding it. But what are some of the tips that you share with people that are wrestling with over-the-counter anxiety?
Yeah, great question. I do look at it as kind of the two-sided thing. There's the mental piece, kind of like you were saying, am I praying more or am I worrying more? I say, when I recognize that I'm worrying, let me stop and be mindful for a minute. This worry is pushing me to something. What is it pushing me to do? Am I getting stuck in that worry? Or can I take a moment to say, I am worrying. Now, what am I going to choose to do with that? So let's look at the thought side of things. What am I choosing to do with those thoughts? Where am I taking them? Am I taking them to God? And then am I taking them to my community, to the people who have my back? Am I taking them to perhaps I need to do a little more work in some areas? Maybe there are steps I need to be taking to move myself towards those goals that I am worried about. And then there's the physical side of things. There are skills to help us regulate our breathing, to calm our bodies, to retrain some of those things. Like when we think about the zebra and the lion, the zebra gets away. And then if you watch a documentary, oftentimes you'll see the zebra shake itself out. That's a physiological skill it has to release some of that stress and anxiety.
Right.
There are skills like that we can teach in counseling
so I need
to help our
massage,
bodies.
what you're saying.
Possibly
wait
something to talk about with your husband. Yes.
Wait a minute. Anniversary is coming up.
But I will say things like a snack, something to drink, physical affection, laughter, and tears. Those are go-tos because your brain cannot take those things in and at the same time perceive threat.
Wow.
So if you're able to do one of those things in a moment that you're really keyed up and anxious, it kind of forces an override to that amygdala and says, nope, we're safe.
So Dana, what I'm hearing Rebecca say is that whenever you're feeling anxious, we should just have sex.
Is that what you're?
It feels like, because you can't do both.
I was just saying something.
No, well,
or a snack. One or the other.
No, I didn't. No, I keyed in on one major focus.
And I really was thinking snack.
I want to help you.
Like crumble cookie is what I was saying.
No, maybe after.
I love crumble cookie.
Okay, well, you hear what you hear. I heard what I heard.
Perhaps the one with anxiety gets to choose off the list.
Oh,
absolutely.
man.
Rebecca.
Also do marital counseling.
Rebecca, that's not helpful. That wasn't helpful to me.
That's why I have anxiety.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm neither the solution. Okay, got it.
You might be the problem.
So hey, I want to give kind of a sneak peek, backstage pass look at what didn't happen in the sermon today. I don't know if I told you this or not. But we had this whole plan, Jeremiah and I, our worship guy. Did I tell you about this?
You did.
Okay. So our whole plan was that we were going to start the sermon today during the meet and greet, we were going to be on the platform kind of arguing with each other and like pointing fingers and like fussing at each other. and then we're going to play the bumper and still be fussing at each other. And then the sermon is supposed to start, but we're over here arguing and we're getting heated. And now you're going to hear us arguing. And then elders were going to come up and try to break it up. And then at a certain point, we were all going to turn to the crowd and say, "And scene." And then I was going to say, "What you're feeling is called anxiety." Okay, so I shared that idea with some people. And one of the people I shared that with has clinical anxiety. And they said to me, "Fike, if you did that and I were in the room, I would not be able to recover for the rest of the sermon." And so that's why I didn't do it. But now you've gotten to know what I really wanted to do in that sermon.
Yeah, it was not me. And I do have that. But I was thinking the same thing. So I'm really glad.
You didn't tell me. Anyway, just so you know, I'm teachable. Just want to share that. That's all.
I think the experiential learning piece would have been very interesting, but that's good feedback. Sometimes once the anxiety happens, it takes real intervention to get your brain to calm back down. You cannot take in new information when your amygdala is activated, because that happens here too.
Crumble cookie, maybe. They would stay focused.
Crumble cookies really on your mind today.
And they're closed today.
Yeah. Oh. They're like Chick-fil-A.
I know,
yeah,
right?
It's hurtful.
Rough.
Anyway.
All right. Well, so is there anything else you guys want to say about anxiety? Speak to the people that are maybe wrestling with it. And what word of encouragement would you give, Dana, having walked through it all this time? What would you say to someone that's going, you know what? I think this is more than emotional. I think this is more than maybe spiritual. There's actually something wrong. I don't know how you did that flap thing. There's I'm flipping my lid more often than I'm supposed to. What would you say to a person that's walking through that? How would you encourage them?
Man, I wished I got help a lot earlier. And it's more of just the application and being self-aware of the way you react to things and your emotions has helped me a lot. I didn't say this, but even memorizing scripture and quoting that in midst of that you can't breathe, or preparation for presentations, just being kind of over prepared has helped me to feel more confident in my presentations at work. But to have the help is the best part, and have a team that really supports you and cares for you in the middle of it.
Yeah. That's not to say you're always going to get it right.
No.
Right.
And that's why I shared this week. There's plenty of times I can share lots of, panic attacks or anxiety or, stuff like that I've kind of been. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to share this week's anxiety situation because the best thing to do is to just be aware of it. And it's baby steps, working through it, it's baby steps. It's not like I'm perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to add to that, what you said about a team, I'm assuming you're talking about the family.
I'm talking about family and I'm talking about counseling.
Okay.
I mean, for me, it was a decision that I needed that. I needed more help than what I was getting. And, I love God, and God provided a counselor that cared for me and gave me application to help me with these moments in life.
Yeah.
So.
And as a husband of a person that walked through that, is walking through that, living with it, the thing that we've said this whole series is mental health is not a me problem. It's not a Dana problem. It's a we problem. And it desired and, required a we solution.
Right.
And so all of us, all the people who know you and love you, need to know what it is that's going on with you so that we can better love you. And I would say to the folks that are walking through it, let's get rid of that stigma. Let's get rid of the fear that people might judge you, that people might think less of you, or any of that stuff. Don't be anxious about your anxiety. Just know that the people that love you will understand and will absolutely make space for you to walk through healing because they want to see you well. And so to hide that and to try to own it yourself, or this is going to be a me solution, and that just, it's not going to work. So don't do that. Rebecca, what would you add to that?
I think I would add sometimes the thought of asking for help to work on something like anxiety can cause more anxiety.
Yeah.
And so a little taste of what might happen in the counseling office to work on anxiety would be, imagine a space where you can come in and sit across from someone who will say, here you are safe. Here there is no lion. Here we are going to practice helping your brain and your body learn what it feels like to be safe. Learn the experience of teaching them to be safe. Practice the skills of teaching your brain and your body to feel safe so that you can take that out into the world. Learn what it feels like to trust when God says, I have made you whole and in my image and free and pleasing in my sight. Learn to believe those things so that you can go out and live that life that I desire you to live. That is what you practice in the counseling room so that you can then live the way that God desires you live.
Right.
And if people are local, aren't you in counseling? So where do you work, and how could they get in touch with you if they're watching locally?
Yeah, I think perhaps we could we put some information somewhere? And there are
so just imagine links right now that your email is on the screen.
There you go. Perfect.
It's happening right now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We will make some contacts available.
Yeah. And you know what? Today in church, I said that we've been announcing this for 3 weeks. Today was the 4th week that we've said that our church, the Movement Church, would be glad to pay for your first 5 visits to a licensed professional Christian counselor, Rebecca being one, Elise being another, and we know a couple of others as well. And finally today, because the first 3 weeks, nobody took us up on the offer. But finally today, someone came to me and said, hey, I want to take you up on that offer. And so I'm really excited about that because I think that means that we're at least kind of penetrating that divide, and helping people to see that, to say I need help is such an important part of the human experience. So anyway, you might have a new client pretty soon. Pretty excited about that. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us today on And Another Thing. We're starting next week in our Psalms series. It's a series called TMC Storytellers Presents the Stories Behind the Psalms. It's pretty cool. We're going to connect what was actually happening in real time with the writers of the Psalms with when they wrote that particular psalm. And so that we'll do that all summer. One thing to look forward to, and I would challenge you to go read 1 Kings chapter 2 and read the very last words of King David. And I hope they inspire you like they inspired me. All that next week. But thanks so much for joining us. We love you guys. We're praying for God's very best for you. We're praying that if you need help, will lift your hand and say, I need help. Don't be afraid. And if you need to talk to someone, email me, email somebody at the church. We would love to help you. We'd love to hear your stories of how these conversations are helping you, how they're informing you and shaping you and inspiring you. We love you guys. God bless you. Thanks for joining us today on And Another Thing.
Hi, thank you for joining us at the Movement Church. So what is God leading you to do next? And how can we help? Just send us an email to info@movementchurch.co and tell us how we can pray for you and how to help you take the next steps in your spiritual journey. If you'd like to contribute financially to our ministry, text the amount you would like, any amount, to give at the number 84321 or look us up online. You can find the movementchurch.co on any social media platform. We hope you give us a follow and a like. Keep in touch with us, and we would love to keep in touch with you. And remember, God is for you, and so are we.